The rain battered the windshield of my old Corolla with such force that the wipers could barely keep up. My hands, deformed by arthritis, gripped the steering wheel with a determination I didn't know I still possessed. Beside me, on the passenger seat, a 3-layer carrot cake rested inside a cardboard box reinforced with duct tape. I had molded each marzipan carrot with these same painful hands. For Elizabeth, always for Elizabeth. Before I continue, tell me in the comments which city you're reading this story from, and if you've ever experienced something similar. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss stories like this one. The radio was playing an old Jim Croce song, Time in a Bottle. Ironic how life sometimes seems to laugh at us. 12 hours driving under this storm, with 78 years on my back and a cancer diagnosis I had overcome 2 years ago. All to see my daughter's smile when I surprised her on her 50th birthday. 50 years. How quickly time has passed, my God. Mrs. Wilson, are you sure you can drive all the way to Boston by yourself? The concerned voice of Martha, my neighbor in Charlotte, still echoed in my head. Yes, I am. I've been driving since I was 25 when Anthony taught me. I haven't forgotten just because I'm old. Old, the word weighed more than my arthritis. But I didn't feel old inside. I felt like a 30-year-old girl trapped in a body that no longer obeyed as before. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw my gray hair tied in a simple bun. My eyes, they say, remained the same. Brown, lively. Eyes of someone who still has a long road ahead, as Anthony used to say. Interstate 95 was chaos with that rain. Cars reducing speed, some stopped on the shoulder waiting for the storm to pass. I couldn't stop. Elizabeth's birthday was tomorrow, and I wanted to be there when she woke up. I wanted to hug her, smell her perfume, look closely at the features she inherited from her father, see if the years had weighed on her as they had on me. I passed through Baltimore when the sky was already darkening. The fine drizzle replaced the storm, but the cold remained. I turned up the heater and adjusted my glasses. A truck driver honked when I passed him. I smiled. Nobody expects a little old lady of almost 80 to drive so skillfully. I remembered Elizabeth as a small child sitting on my lap while I drove through the streets of Charlotte. Anthony would go crazy. Margaret, that's dangerous. She needs to be in her car seat. But I loved feeling her little body against mine, her tiny hands on the steering wheel, pretending to help me. Faster, Mommy, she would shout, and I'd accelerate. Just a little, enough to draw giggles from her. Where did those giggles go? When was the last time I heard Elizabeth laugh like that without reservations? In recent years, our conversations had been reduced to monosyllables over the phone. Hi, honey. How are you? Fine. How's work? Good. And Richard? Busy. Are you coming to visit me on the holiday? I doubt it, Mom. We don't have money for the trip. No money. I would swallow that excuse while making a transfer to her account. $2,000, $3,000. To help with the bills, I would say. She would thank me, promise to visit next month. Next month never came. Anthony would have reprimanded me if he were alive. Maggie, you're raising a spoiled daughter. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps I compensated with money for his absence after. He left us when Elizabeth was only 15. Massive heart attack. One day he was there, laughing with his deep voice that made the whole house vibrate. The next, only silence. The smell of coffee brought me back to the present. I stopped at a gas station to refuel and stretch my legs. The cake seemed intact. I adjusted the box and took a deep breath. I was getting close. While having coffee at the counter of the small diner, I looked at my wedding ring. I never took it off since Anthony passed away. 27 years of widowhood, a lifetime. I could have remarried. There were opportunities. Is Oswald the pharmacist, invited me to dinner numerous times. Even Dr. Mitchell, the oncologist who took care of me during cancer treatment, showed interest. But something in me refused to move on, as if Anthony was still there, by my side, invisible. "Are you okay, ma'am?" The young cashier was staring at me, concerned. "Yes, I am, my dear. Just thinking about life." "You shouldn't be driving in this weather, you know. It's dangerous." I smiled. "I'll be 79 in a few months, sweetie. Danger for me is waking up and discovering I have no more dreams." She looked at me, confused, then smiled. I paid for the coffee and went back to the car. Less than 2 hours to Boston, to Elizabeth's apartment in Beacon Hill. I had never been there. It was always she who rarely visited me in Charlotte. But I had the address written down on a piece of paper and the GPS on my cell phone that my grandson Ryan had taught me to use before leaving for his exchange program in Germany. Ryan, my only grandson. At 23, he was building a life far away from us, doing a master's degree in engineering, dating a German girl. He sent weekly messages, made monthly video calls. Even thousands of miles away, he seemed more present than Elizabeth, who lived only 800 miles away. And you, what would you do if your daughter seemed so distant even though she was so close? The rain returned with full force when I entered the city of Boston. The chaotic traffic, the lights of the buildings reflecting in the puddles, the pollution. Everything so different from my Charlotte. How could Elizabeth prefer this to the tranquility of the South, the noise, the rush, the impersonality of people? Perhaps that was exactly what she sought. Anonymity, distance, absence of roots. I followed the GPS instructions and finally reached the condominium where Elizabeth lived, an imposing building with doormen and well-maintained gardens. I parked the car on the street in front of the gate. It was almost midnight and my body ached from the effort of the journey. But I was there. I had made it. I took my cell phone and sent a message to Elizabeth. "Honey, I'm arriving in Boston, going to stay at a hotel. We'll talk tomorrow." I lied. I wanted to surprise her in the morning, enter with my own key, which she gave me for emergencies, and see her still in pajamas, disheveled as when she was a child. I showed my ID to the doorman, who checked my name on the list of permanent authorized visitors. At least Elizabeth hadn't removed my name from the list. Small victories. "Mrs. Wilson? Miss Elizabeth's daughter." I laughed. "No, dear, I'm her mother." He seemed embarrassed. "I'm sorry, ma'am. It's just that you don't come around here much." "That's right," I replied, swallowing the lump in my throat. "But today I came to make a surprise." I went up in the elevator, carefully carrying the cake and a small overnight bag. 3rd floor, apartment 32. I stopped in front of the door and took a deep breath. It was late, but there was light coming from under the door. I decided not to use the key. Better to ring the doorbell so as not to scare her. Before I could press the button, I heard voices. Elizabeth and Richard were talking in the living room close to the door. I froze. I didn't want them to think I was eavesdropping, but something prevented me from announcing my presence. Perhaps Elizabeth's tone of voice, tense, irritated. She called again today, Richard, 3 times. Said she was missing me, wanted to know how I was doing, as if she really cared. My heart skipped a beat. They were talking about me. "Your mother doesn't have anyone else, Elizabeth. It's natural that she keeps calling." Richard's voice sounded bored, as if that conversation was recurrent. "Natural? You know what's not natural. Being almost 50 and still having a mother who monitors every step I take, who calls asking if I'm eating properly, if I'm sleeping well. She worries about you. She suffocates me. Sometimes Elizabeth lowered her voice, but I could still hear her clearly. Sometimes I hope she has an accident or something. Not to die, you know. Just so she can't call me every day." Richard laughed, a dry, complicit laugh. "Or that she gets lost and leaves us in peace for a weekend." The cake almost slipped from my hands. I felt as if all the air had been sucked from my lungs. A buzzing filled my ears, and for a moment I thought I might faint right there in the hallway. Suffocating her? Monitoring? Was that what my daughter thought of me? Was that the burden my love represented to her? I looked at the cake in my hands, each marzipan carrot crafted with care, despite the pain in my joints. Each layer of batter made with the best ingredients, the cream cheese frosting, her grandmother's recipe that Elizabeth had loved so much in childhood. I used the key. I opened the door silently and entered the apartment while they continued talking, now on the balcony. I saw the immaculate American kitchen, granite countertops, appliances that I had helped buy. I left the cake on the counter and placed a small card beside it. "Happy birthday, my daughter. May God always bless you. With love, Mom." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I just left, closing the door with the same silence with which I had entered. In the elevator, a lady entered on the second floor and smiled at me. "Are you okay? You look pale." I forced a smile. "I am. Just tired from the trip." "Visiting relatives?" "Yes, but I think they weren't expecting me." I returned to the car under the rain that was now falling lightly, almost a mist. I started the engine but couldn't leave immediately. I looked at the building where my daughter lived her life, a life that I realized at that moment had no room for me. I thought about all the road I had traveled to get there. 12 hours driving, arthritis hurting, heart full of hope. For what? To discover that my love was a burden, that my concern was suffocating, that my presence was unwanted. I wiped away a solitary tear that ran down my face. I wouldn't cry anymore. Not today. I shifted into gear and left, with no defined destination, just away from there. The lights of Boston passed, blurred through the window. I don't know if from the rain or from the tears I refused to shed. That night, I stayed at a simple hotel near Copley Square. Lying in bed, looking at the ceiling, I reviewed my entire life as a mother. The sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the extra shifts I took as a teacher to pay for Elizabeth's college, the savings I gave up to help her buy her first apartment. You left us in peace for a weekend. Richard's phrase echoed in my mind. Peace, as if my presence were a war, as if my love were an invasion. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't pray, asking for health for my daughter or protection for my grandson. I prayed for myself. Lord, give me strength to do what I need to do, and wisdom to accept what I cannot change. I fell asleep to the sound of rain on the window, thinking about the long way back to Charlotte that awaited me. But before that, I had important decisions to make. 9 days have passed since that night. In Boston, 9 days of absolute silence. My cell phone didn't ring once with Elizabeth's name on the screen. Not even a message asking if I had left the cake. Nothing. As if I had never been there. As if the cake had appeared by magic in her kitchen. The journey back to Charlotte was different. No rush, no anxiety. Just me and the road, with an emptiness in my chest that not even the most beautiful views of the Appalachian Mountains could fill. I drove slowly, stopping to admire the green of the forest that rose imposingly on both sides of the highway. Anthony always said that God created mountains to remind us of how small we are. That day, I felt tiny. That morning I woke up determined. I opened the curtains of my bedroom and let the winter sun enter timidly through the window. I looked at the garden I had cultivated for decades. The hydrangeas Elizabeth said were her favorite flowers. The blueberry bush we planted when Anthony was still alive. The herb garden I used to make the teas Elizabeth never wanted to learn. To prepare, I picked up the phone and dialed the number of Vanessa, my lawyer for more than 20 years. Vanessa, it's Margaret. I need to revise my will. Today, if possible. 3 hours later, I was sitting in Vanessa's elegant office in downtown Charlotte. At 65, she still maintained the firm posture and piercing gaze that intimidated any judge. A friendship of decades built when we were both younger. I, an English teacher. She, a newly graduated lawyer who taught law classes at the same public school. What happened, Maggie? You seem different. I told her everything. The trip, the cake, the words I heard. As I spoke, I felt a mixture of shame and relief. Shame for having been so blind. Relief for finally seeing. I want to see all the documents I've signed in the last 10 years related to Elizabeth. Vanessa opened her computer and began to search. The more files she found, the more my heart sank. I was a guarantor of 3 credit cards in Elizabeth's name, co-signer of 2 bank loans totaling almost $300,000. There was a power of attorney that gave her full powers over my accounts in case of physical or mental incapacity. A document I vaguely remembered signing when I had surgery to remove the tumor. This beach house they bought last year. How did they get financing if you told me they were always without money? Vanessa typed some information and turned the screen to me. There it was. I was the guarantor of the financing of a house in Hampton Beach, New Hampshire. Value, $800,000. They claimed not to have money to visit me, I whispered, while they were buying a beach house. And you? What would you do if you discovered your love was being used in this way? Indignation replaced sadness. Years believing that my financial help was necessary, when in fact I was feeding a lifestyle that I didn't even know about. I remembered all the times I economized on medications to be able to send money to Elizabeth, the vacations I never took, the trip to Europe that Anthony and I had dreamed of, and that I postponed indefinitely after his death because Elizabeth needed help with the rent. I want to revoke everything, Vanessa. The power of attorney, the guarantees, the co-signatures, everything. Maggie, this will have serious consequences. The banks can call in the loans, demand the house. I don't care. I won't be a hostage to my own money anymore. That same day, I signed the documents to revoke the power of attorney. In the following days, I went to the banks. Some denied the withdrawal of the guarantee. Others accepted under conditions. I canceled 2 additional credit cards that I didn't even know existed in my name. The new will was the most difficult step. Sitting at the dining table with Vanessa, I rewrote my legacy. The house where I lived with Anthony, the savings of a lifetime, the small farm on the outskirts of Davidson. Everything will be destined for Blossom, an institution that supports women in the process of rebuilding after domestic violence. I left only a small fund for Ryan, my grandson, which he could access after turning 30. Are you sure, Maggie? I am, Vanessa. For the first time in a long time, I'm sure of something. The calls began 3 days later. First, confused messages on WhatsApp. Mom, the bank called me about the card. Did something happen? Then increasingly desperate calls. They said you canceled the guarantees. How are we going to pay the installments on the house? I didn't answer. Each ring of the cell phone was like a confirmation of what I already knew. It wasn't me who mattered. It was the money I provided. Finally, I answered a call on a Thursday afternoon. Mom, thank God. I'm desperate. The bank is threatening to take the beach house and... Elizabeth, I interrupted with a calmness I didn't know I possessed. I'm fine. If one day you want to talk with sincerity, I'll be here, but don't ask me for anything other than respect. What are you talking about? I am being sincere. We're having serious financial problems and you've left us in the lurch. Left them in the lurch. The same words Richard used that night, as if I had some obligation, as if my life existed only to serve theirs. No, Elizabeth, I never left you in the lurch, but now I need to take care of myself. It's because of the cake, isn't it? You went there. Mom, I didn't even know it was you. I thought it was the neighbor. I hung up. There was nothing more to say. The lies continued, even when confronted with the truth. In the following days, I found a new rhythm for my life. I began to frequent Blossom as a volunteer. At first, just to get to know the institution that would receive my inheritance, then because I felt useful in a way I hadn't felt in years. Between helping women rewrite resumes, listening to stories of overcoming and preparing collective meals, I rediscovered something I had lost. Purpose. Not purpose tied to another person, but one that came from within. Mrs. Wilson, you have a way with words, said Lucy, Blossom's coordinator, after hearing me help a young mother prepare a letter for a job interview. Would you like to give English workshops here? Thus was born the project, Words That Liberate. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I taught grammar, writing, and literature to women seeking to start over. I used the same methods I had used for 40 years as a public school teacher, but now without the pressure of tests and curricula. Just the pleasure of seeing eyes light up when they understood the power that exists in mastering one's own language. I enrolled in a walking group for seniors at Freedom Park. I began attending a painting studio on Wednesdays. On Saturdays, I dedicated myself to gardening, no longer cultivating the flowers Elizabeth liked, but the ones I admired myself: lavender, sunflowers, begonias. Elizabeth's letters continued to arrive, always the same victimizing tone. How can you do this? To us. You know we can't pay for everything ourselves. I thought family was forever. No genuine apology, no acknowledgement of what had been said that night. I responded only once, with a simple card. Elizabeth, the door of my house and my heart remain open to you, but not for emotional or financial exploitation. When you're ready for an honest conversation, let me know. With love, your mother. 2 months later, I learned from a mutual friend that Elizabeth was pregnant. At 50, it would be a high-risk pregnancy. I sent a card. Congratulations. A new life deserves new beginnings. I hope you find what you need. I am at peace. She didn't respond. I didn't expect her to. Life went on. I planted tomatoes in the backyard, learned to make preserves. I adopted an old cat from the animal shelter, named him Anthony, to the astonishment and laughter of my new friends from the walking group. Maggie, you named your cat after your late husband? Why not? They're both stubborn, affectionate when they want to be, and sleep all afternoon. I discovered the joy of small things. The smell of fresh coffee in the morning. The warmth of the sun on my back as I read on the garden bench. The intense flavor of a peach picked directly from the tree. The pleasure of going to bed without pain, knowing I had done everything I wanted that day, not what others expected of me. It was on a Sunday afternoon that I received the call from the hospital. Elizabeth had gone into premature labor with complications. She had asked them to call me. I went without hesitation. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt. I went because I wanted to go. Because despite everything, she was my daughter. And because finally, I could choose to be there. It was no longer an imposition of the sacrificial mother role I had built over decades. Massachusetts General Hospital was imposing, luxurious. I thought of the thousands of dollars I had sent over the years, while Elizabeth claimed financial difficulties. I took a deep breath and entered. Richard was in the waiting room, pale. He raised his eyes when he saw me. and for the first time in years there wasn't the usual indifference in his gaze. There was fear. "Margaret, thank you for coming." "How is she?" "Stable now. The baby was born. She's in the neonatal ICU. She's very small, but the doctors are optimistic." "And Elizabeth?" "Asking for you. She's in room 415. I went up unhurriedly. Each step was conscious, present. I was no longer the desperate mother running to rescue her daughter. I was Margaret, 78 years old, mistress of herself, choosing to be there. Elizabeth was pale in bed, tubes and monitors around her. Seeing me, her eyes filled with tears. "Mom, you came." "Of course I came. After everything I did, you're my daughter, Elizabeth." She cried, a cry different from any other I had ever seen. It wasn't manipulative. It didn't seek compassion. It was the cry of someone who finally sees their own mistake. "I'm doing therapy," she said after calming down. "I started after you stopped answering my calls. The therapist made me see how much I used you, Mom, as emotional support, as financial support, but never as an effective presence." I remained silent, letting her continue. "That night, when you left the cake, I didn't know it was you. I mean, I knew it was yours. I recognized your handwriting on the card. But I thought you had it delivered. I never imagined you had driven all the way here, that you had heard what I said." "I heard, Elizabeth, every word." "I know, and I regret so much. Not for the money, the cards, the house. I regret having wasted so many years treating you like an ATM, not like my mother." I looked at her, really looked. I saw the wrinkles around her eyes, the gray hair at her temples that she always dyed. I saw the little girl who once held my hand to cross the street, the teenager who cried in my lap when her father died, the woman who distanced herself, perhaps seeking her own identity. "I love you, Elizabeth," I said with a firm voice, "but love doesn't erase everything. If we want to rebuild something, it will be slowly, with respect, and without lies." She nodded, wiping away tears. "Can I meet my granddaughter?" We went together to the neonatal ICU. Through the glass, I saw a tiny being fighting for life. Mary Margaret, the nurses said, "My name." A tribute or an attempt at manipulation? It no longer mattered. That child was not to blame for the choices of the adults around her. In the months that followed, we rebuilt our relationship. Slowly. Occasional coffee when Elizabeth came to Charlotte. Calls without demands. Richard remained distant, embarrassed perhaps. Elizabeth trying. Me establishing clear boundaries, defining what I accepted and what I would no longer accept. And I kept my routine alive, present, strong. I redefined what family is: sincere friends, chosen bonds, encounters that don't require effort to exist. On my 79th birthday, I organized a simple party in the backyard. I made another carrot cake, this time with ginger and cardamom. I served it on porcelain I had kept for decades. I invited those who supported me, who saw me grow emotionally in this year of discoveries. Elizabeth came with little Mary Margaret in her arms. Richard stayed in Boston with some excuse, better that way. Everyone toasted not only to my birthday, but to the courage to start over. Among the presents, Elizabeth gave me a small frame with her daughter's ultrasound picture. Along with it, a note. "She has your nose." I smiled. I didn't know what the future would bring, but I knew what the past had taught me. Love without respect is emotional debt. Help without gratitude is prison. And forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means not imprisoning yourself in what hurt you. I chose to live free, with dignity, real affection, and the certainty that it's never too late to say, "I choose myself." Ryan returned from Germany the following month. bringing his German fiancée, Hannah. He was shocked by all the changes, not just in the house, now full of vibrant colors and paintings I had made in the studio, but mainly in me. "Grandma, you're different," he said as we walked through Freedom Park on a Sunday morning. "Different how, my dear?" "Lighter, more you." "More me. What a perfect definition for this new phase." For the first time in decades, I was simply Margaret, not just Elizabeth's mother, Ryan's grandmother, Anthony's widow. I was a whole woman with my own desires, renewed dreams, and above all, with the courage to establish boundaries. Elizabeth still struggled to understand these limits. Sometimes she slipped back into old habits. Constant calls, small manipulations, indirect comments about money. When that happened, I would simply say, "Elizabeth, we're going back to the old pattern. Let's try again tomorrow." And I would hang up. At first she would be furious. With time she began to recognize her own behavior. Little Mary grew strong despite the premature birth. When she turned 6 months old, Elizabeth brought her to spend a weekend with me. Observing my daughter with my granddaughter, I realized that she was repeating with me the same patterns she was establishing with Mary. Unrealistic expectations, subtle demands, transfer of responsibilities. "Elizabeth," I said while rocking the little one to sleep, "you don't need to be perfect for your daughter. You just need to be truthful." She looked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" "That perhaps I made mistakes with you too. I tried to be everything, do everything, solve everything. I didn't give you space to fail, to discover your own solutions. Forgive me for that." That was the first time I asked my daughter for forgiveness. Not for the love I gave, but for the suffocation that love at times caused. Elizabeth cried, holding my hand, a small step toward healing. At Christmas that year, I opened my house for a special lunch, not just for Elizabeth, Richard, who finally began to look me in the eyes again, and little Mary. I also invited Martha, my faithful neighbor, Lucy and 5 women from Blossom, my painting group, my walking companions, a chosen family, built with genuine affection. Before serving dessert, another carrot cake, my culinary signature, I raised my glass for a toast to life, which always gives us another chance, even when we think it's too late. I looked around the table at those faces I had learned to love in freedom, not out of obligation, at Elizabeth, who still had a long way to go, but who was finally beginning to see beyond herself, at little Mary, who might grow up in a healthier family than her mother had. And mostly I toasted to myself, to the Margaret who drove 12 hours in the rain to discover a painful truth, to the woman who found courage to start over at 78, to the teacher, mother, grandmother, friend, and finally protagonist of her own story. Anthony, my cat, jumped onto my lap and settled in, purring. Elizabeth laughed. "He's just like Dad, isn't he?" "Just like him," I agreed, stroking his soft fur. "Stubborn, but full of love. Like life. Stubborn in knocking us down, generous in giving us new chances. And I finally was ready to take advantage of each one of them.